Have you ever felt like no matter what you do, no matter how much effort you put into your appearance, your words, your presence, he just doesn't seem to see you the way you want him to? As if you're there, but not quite seen, close, but not fully felt. You wonder what it takes to make him pause, to really stop and look at you with that kind of depth that says, I see you, not just with my eyes, but with something more. And maybe, deep down, you're tired of trying, tired of guessing which version of yourself will finally be enough. But what if I told you there is one thing you can do? Not 10, not 5, just one so simple, yet so rare, that once you embody it, he will never see you the same way again. Not because you tried harder, but because something in you awakened, something ancient, magnetic, untouchable. Carl Jung spoke of this moment. He didn't describe it in the language of romance or seduction. He spoke of it as a psychological event, a shift in perception, when the unconscious finally sees its own reflection in someone else. When a man meets a woman who embodies what he has yet to awaken in himself, he doesn't just see her, he feels her. And in that moment, she becomes unforgettable. Not because she wore red or laughed at the right moments, but because she triggered something in him that had been asleep for years, a memory he didn't know he had, a yearning he couldn't name. Jung called it projection, but in truth, it feels more like recognition, a soul-level remembering. And the woman who knows how to hold herself in that space calm, whole, unapologetically present, becomes more than a lover or a partner. She becomes an awakening. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to speak louder or shrink smaller. You don't need to perform. You need to stop abandoning yourself. You need to stop dimming that quiet, steady voice inside you that already knows. Because the moment you return to that place within the moment, you stop chasing love and instead become will feel it. Even if he doesn't understand it, he will sense the shift. And here's what makes this even more powerful. When you access this version of yourself, it no longer matters whether he sees you or not. Because by then, you will have seen yourself. And that changes everything. Today, I'm going to take you through the psychological mechanism that explains this shift in perception. We'll talk about anima and projection, the unconscious magnetism that draws people together, not through logic, but through deep inner resonance. We'll explore how your presence can awaken something in him that no amount of charm or physical beauty ever could. And by the end of this, you'll understand that the only thing you truly need to do is to remember who you are. Because when you do that, he won't just see you differently. He will feel like he's never seen anyone quite like you before. And he will be right. They say men love with their eyes. That attraction is rooted in what they see, how a woman looks, how closely she fits into some cultural standard of beauty. And if you believe that, you might spend years chasing after a moving target. You might change your hair, your clothes, your weight, your smile. You might stand in front of a mirror wondering if you are enough, trying to measure yourself against a reflection that never quite feels right. But here's the truth no one told you. Carl Jung, one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century, believed something radically different. He believed that what draws a man to a woman, what makes her unforgettable, is not simply what he sees with his eyes, but what she awakens in his unconscious. According to Jung, every man carries within him an internal feminine image, what he called the anima. This isn't about physical traits or personality. It's about the emotional and symbolic qualities that lie dormant within him, waiting for the right person to bring them to life. When a man encounters a woman who unknowingly matches the energy or the essence of his anima, the attraction is immediate and intense. Not because of her appearance, but because she reflects back to him something he has not yet integrated in himself. She becomes a mirror to his unlived inner life. And the moment he feels that resonance, he is pulled in magnetically, irrationally, deeply. That's why you don't need to be more beautiful. You don't need to compete with filtered images or chase the impossible idea of perfection. You need to understand the real reason he's drawn to you or not. Because once you realize how attraction actually works, everything changes. You stop trying to appeal to the surface, and instead, you begin to embody what speaks directly to the soul. Now, let me be clear. You don't consciously control his anima. This isn't a game or a strategy. You cannot fake this energy. But you can become aware of how your own energy moves through the world. You can begin to recognize that your presence, your emotional truth, the way you carry yourself when you are fully aligned with who you are, those are the signals his unconscious is searching for. And when he finds it in you, it is not your body he falls for. It is the symbol you've become to him. Jung explained that this process is entirely unconscious. He's not thinking, "She reminds me of my inner feminine." He's not aware of the projection at all. But he feels it. That mysterious pull, that inexplicable familiarity. And here's where it gets powerful for you. When you stop trying to become someone else. When you stop masking your truth, just to be accepted. And you begin living from the center of who you really are. You naturally activate these deeper archetypes in others. You become more than just a woman in the room. You become a presence, a force, the one he cannot explain but cannot forget. And it happens the moment you choose authenticity over performance. The moment you allow your real voice, your emotions, your inner rhythm to take up space in the world. That's what makes you luminous. That's what stirs something ancient in him. Not the curve of your waist or the style of your dress, but the fact that you are fully alive inside your own skin. The more you embody yourself, the more powerfully you awaken his unconscious. And when he feels that activation, he sees you differently. Not because of what you're wearing, but because of what you're transmitting. This is not about seduction. It's about truth. The truth of who you are when you're no longer afraid to be seen. Because the woman who has returned to herself, who is no longer chasing love, validation, or approvalness, the one who naturally draws everything toward her, not because she's trying, but because she's aligned. And in that space, you don't need to do more. You don't need to speak louder. You don't need to try harder. You just need to be real. He won't understand why he feels the way he does. But he'll feel it. He'll feel you. And from that moment on, he won't be able to see you the same way again. There is a woman living inside every man's psyche. She doesn't have a name, a face, or a specific voice. But she is there. She influences what he notices, what he desires, what he feels inexplicably drawn to. Carl Jung called her the Anima, the unconscious feminine image that resides within every man. And once you understand her, you'll understand why some men are captivated by you for reasons they can't explain, and why others seem to miss your presence entirely. The Anima is not just a psychological concept. She is an emotional force, a symbolic presence. She is shaped by his earliest experiences of the feminine, his relationship with his mother, the women he observed growing up, the cultural ideals he unconsciously absorbed. Over time, these impressions weave together into an inner figure. She is not a real woman, but she feels real to him. She represents the qualities he unconsciously associates with the feminine, especially those parts he has not yet developed or integrated within himself. When a man meets a woman in the external world who mirrors his animal weather through her energy, her presence, her essence, he feels a sudden emotional reaction. It's more than attraction. It's recognition. She seems familiar, though they've never met. She feels significant, though no words have been spoken. And the reason is this. She is resonating with a figure he has already carried inside. This is why some connections feel fated, why some men fall deeply, intensely, even irrationally in love with a woman they barely know. It's not truly about her as an individual. It's about what she symbolizes to his unconscious. She has awakened something ancient, a part of himself that he has longed to find, without even realizing it. You may have experienced this from the other side. A man becomes fascinated with you, without any clear reason. He hangs on your words, watches you closely, reacts strongly to your presence. You haven't done anything special, but he feels something profound. That is the Anima projection at work. You have unknowingly stepped into the role of his inner feminine. And because that part of him has not yet been brought into consciousness, he believes what he sees in you is entirely yours, not realizing it is his own soul reaching out through your reflection. But here is where the story deepens. The Anima is not just a romantic fantasy. She is a guide. She represents the bridge between his ego and his deeper emotional life. She leads him into the inner world of feeling, intuition, and vulnerability. And when she is awakened through a relationship with a woman, she initiates a process of psychological transformation. That process, however, is not always smooth. Because the man is not falling in love with you. He is falling in love with what you represent. And until he realizes this, he will not truly see you. He will see the ideal, the dream, the symbol, and that can feel both magical and unsettling. You may feel adored and misunderstood at the same time, desired, yet not fully known, elevated, but not really met. This is the danger of projection. It creates connection, but it also creates illusion. The man believes he loves you, but what he loves is the part of himself you reflect. And if he never moves beyond that projection, the relationship will eventually strain under the weight of his expectations. Because the moment you act in ways that contradict his image, the moment your humanity disrupts the fantasy, he may feel disappointed, confused, even betrayed. Jung warned us of this. He knew that the anima must eventually be withdrawn from the outer person and integrated into the man's own psyche. Only then can he truly relate to a woman as she is, rather than as a carrier of his unconscious hopes and fears. And this is where your awareness becomes powerful. When you understand the anima, you no longer take his reactions personally. You no longer confuse projection with love. Instead, you recognize that if a man is drawn to you intensely, emotionally, even irrationally, he may be seeing more than just you. He may be seeing a part of himself in you, a part that is still unknown to him. You can choose to meet that energy with clarity and boundaries. You can choose to be present, but not responsible for his transformation. Because the anima, while awakened through relationship, is his to integrate. It is his path to walk, his shadow to face, his soul to reclaim. And yet, your role is not passive. When you live in your fullness, when you embody your truth, when you radiate the depth of your own feminine essence authentically, unapologetically, you naturally stir something deep in others. You activate archetypes. You become a mirror. Not because you are trying, but because your energy is aligned. This is not about seducing men. It is about understanding energy. The anima is awakened in the presence of feminine wholeness. Not perfection, not performance, but presence. A woman who knows herself becomes a catalyst for inner change. And the man who is ready will feel that. He may not have the words for it. He may not even know why. But something in him will shift. And that shift will not be because of your appearance, your accomplishments, or your charm. It will be because, for a moment, you helped him remember something he had forgotten about himself. And that is unforgettable. To live with this awareness is to move through the world with quiet power. You no longer seek approval. You no longer fear being overlooked. You understand that your presence speaks on levels most people cannot articulate. And the ones who can feel it, who are ready to see it, will be moved by it. That is the truth of the anima. She is not a game. She is not a trick. She is a key that opens the unconscious, a key that awakens the soul. And when you understand her, you stop trying to be seen, because you realize you were never invisible. You were always carrying something ancient, something luminous, something he has been trying to find his whole life. Even if he doesn't yet know it. There is something about a woman who has come home to herself. You can feel it before she speaks. There is no urgency in her presence, no need to impress, no desire to chase. She does not shrink to be accepted, nor does she inflate to be noticed. She simply is. And in that being, she carries a kind of feminine energy that is rare, steady, and unforgettable. This is what Carl Jung might describe as the awakened feminine need, the integration of a woman's essence into conscious expression. It is not about being more emotional or more passive. It is not about becoming softer or louder. It is about being real, fully embodied, rooted in presence, not performance. And when a man meets this kind of woman, something in him pauses. Not because of what she says or how she looks, but because of what he senses. He cannot explain it, but he feels it. A calm magnetism, a quiet depth, A sense that she does not need him, but she could choose him. That distinction changes everything. Most men are used to being pursued in subtle ways. They're used to women bending, adjusting, pleasing, or waiting. But a woman who has awakened to her own feminine energy does none of that. She is not playing to the script of approval. She is not adapting herself to be more desirable. She knows her worth, and more importantly, she trusts it. That kind of woman doesn't chase love. She becomes it. This awakening doesn't happen overnight. For many women, it comes after a long journey, sometimes through heartbreak, loss, or years of trying to fit into a version of femininity that was never theirs to begin with. It comes when she finally stops asking, "What do they want me to be?" and starts asking, "Who am I really when no one is watching?" In that moment, the game ends. The pretending stops, and the true feminine begins to rise. Jung taught that our psychic growth depends on the integration of unconscious aspects of the self. For women, this often means reclaiming the parts of themselves they were taught to hide: their intuition, their emotional intelligence, their sensuality, their stillness, their inner knowing. The awakened feminine is not about becoming someone new. It is about removing everything that was never really you. And when a woman steps into that space, she doesn't just change her life, she changes her energy. Men notice this. Not because you say anything different, but because your energy speaks first. You're not trying to get his attention. You're not performing love. You're not waiting to be chosen. You've already chosen yourself. That is power. But it is not loud. It is not aggressive. It is quiet, graceful, and undeniable. This kind of woman makes a man reflect. She doesn't fill the silence with small talk. She doesn't over-explain. She isn't afraid of space. She invites him into presence not by demanding it, but by living in it. She becomes the mirror where he sees his own restlessness, his own desire for depth, his own longing to be met on a level he rarely reaches. And here's the thing, he may not be ready for it. He may be drawn to you and terrified of you at the same time, because this kind of feminine energy doesn't just attract, it awakens. It stirs something in a man's unconscious. It asks him to rise to meet you, not by playing a role, but by becoming more of who he really is. You cannot force this. You cannot fake it. You don't become unforgettable by trying to be. You become unforgettable when you stop trying to be anything at all. This is not about superiority. It is about clarity. When you are rooted in your feminine truth, you see more clearly. You sense when a man is projecting or pretending. You feel when his words are hollow or his actions misaligned. And because you no longer need love to complete you, you do not settle for it when it confuses you. This clarity is not cold. It is kind. It says, "I see you. I honor your path, but I will not abandon myself to walk it with you." That is the energy shift that leaves a lasting impression. Not the woman who sacrifices herself to be loved, but the one who holds herself with enough reverence to wait for love that can meet her depth. You might ask, but won't that intimidate men? Won't it push them away? The answer is yes. It will push away the ones who are not ready. It will push away those who seek control, validation, or comfort at the expense of growth. But it will draw in something else entirely. The kind of man who is ready to evolve. The kind of love that is not afraid of truth. The kind of connection that is built not on illusion, but on presence. Because here's the truth that no one tells you. The woman who lives in her awakened feminine becomes a kind of turning point in a man's life. Not always the one he ends up with, but the one he never forgets. Why? Because she didn't just make him feel desired, she made him feel seen. Not for who he was pretending to be, but for who he might become. And even if he walks away, even if his fear is louder than his courage, he will never look at other women the same way again. Because once a man has encountered the awakened feminine, once he has felt the stillness of a woman who knows her worth, he realizes what depth really feels like. And depth, once known, cannot be forgotten. So if you've ever felt like you had to do more, be more, prove more to earn love, stop. Your power is not in the proving, it is in the remembering. Remember who you are when you are not trying. Remember the calm that lives in your breath. Remember the wisdom in your silence. Remember the beauty in your enoughness. Because when you do, he will see you differently. And more importantly, so will you. There is a moment, often subtle, when a man stops being merely attracted to a woman and instead becomes awakened by her. Most people don't notice this shift. It doesn't come with fireworks or grand gestures. It comes in silence, in the space between words, in the way her presence lingers, long after she's gone. It's the difference between wanting someone and being changed by them. Attraction is common. It is everywhere. It happens quickly, often on the surface. A look, a smile, a tone of voice. It's instinctive. It's chemistry. But awakening is rare, and it never leaves things the way it found them. You see, being attracted to someone is about how they make you feel in the moment. It's about what they stimulate in your senses, your desire, your imagination. It's exciting, yes, but it fades. It depends on novelty, timing, and often illusion. People fall in and out of attraction all the time, but when someone awakens you, they touch something deeper. They activate a part of you that had been asleep, not just a feeling, but a recognition. You begin to see yourself differently through their presence, and it isn't always comfortable. It's not about ease. It's about truth. Carl Jung spoke of this kind of psychological encounter. He believed that the people who impact us most are those who reflect back the hidden parts of ourselves, the ones who stir our unconscious, who mirror the qualities we have denied, forgotten, or longed for without knowing it. These are not ordinary encounters. They are invitations. When a man meets a woman who awakens him, she does not just catch his attention. She confronts his unconscious. She may not say much, but her energy holds something that disarms his ego, something that disrupts his patterns, something that asks for more than charm or games. She doesn't demand this with words. She simply embodies it. That's why he feels unsteady around her, why he becomes self-conscious, why he feels like he has to be more honest, more present, more real. She doesn't just inspire desire. She inspires introspection. Suddenly, the way he has moved through the world no longer feels sufficient. He wants to show up more deeply, not because she told him to, but because her presence makes anything less feel false. And here is the key difference. When a man is merely attracted, he may want to possess you. He may want to impress you, win you, add you to the list of things that validate him. But when he is awakened, he doesn't want to own you. He wants to know himself through you. He wants to rise to meet what your presence has shown him is possible. That can be overwhelming. Not every man is ready for it. Some will feel the stirring and turn away. They will confuse their fear with disinterest. They will convince themselves that something was off, when in reality, something within was waking up. And waking up is not easy, because to be awakened is to be called out of the familiar. It is to realize that your patterns, your distractions, your old way of loving none of it, will work here. Not with her. Not with this energy. And that kind of realization demands growth. For the woman, this can feel confusing. One moment, he's fully engaged, wide-eyed, listening deeply. The next, he pulls back. He becomes distant, unsure. You might blame yourself. Wonder if you said something wrong. Moved too fast. Cared too much. But most often, what you're witnessing is not rejection. It's resistance. He feels the pull, but he also feels the fear. Because some part of him knows this isn't just another attraction. This is different. And once a man has been awakened, he cannot return to sleep. Not really. Even if he walks away. Even if he tells himself it wasn't real. A seed has been planted. And in time, it will grow. Jung understood that relationships are the greatest mirrors. That we are drawn to people not only because of who they are, but because of who we become in their presence. A woman who lives in her truth, who embodies her own depth, does more than attract. She exposes. She exposes the gap between who he is and who he could be. She exposes the wounds he hasn't healed. She exposes the parts of him that have been waiting for a reason to wake up. And not every man is ready to see that. But the ones who feel the difference between simple attraction and soul-level recognition will never be the same. Because once a man has met a woman who awakens him, every other connection feels different. Not wrong, just shallow by comparison. That doesn't make her better. That doesn't make him weaker. It simply means something true was touched. And truth, once felt, does not let go. So if you find yourself wondering why some men are drawn to you and yet unsettled by you, if you feel like your presence evokes more than you can explain, know this. You were not made to attract. You were made to awaken. And the man who sees that, who feels that, will never forget what you stirred in him, even if he walks away, even if he never tells you. A part of him will carry your reflection for the rest of his life. Because what you gave him wasn't a performance. It wasn't a thrill. It was a glimpse of who he could be. And that kind of gift does not disappear. It echoes, quietly, deeply, forever. There is a kind of woman who stays in a man's mind long after the moment has passed. She is not the loudest. She is not the one who texts first or chases. She is not always the most beautiful by conventional standards. And yet, something about her lingers. She lives in the back of his memory. She appears in his quiet moments. She is the one he thinks about when he wonders why something never felt quite the same again. You might think she had some secret, that she used a strategy or said the perfect words. But the truth is simpler and more profound. She did not need to do anything to be unforgettable, because she was not trying to be. She was simply living in full alignment with herself. And that, more than any tactic or charm, is what made her impossible to forget. This kind of woman carries something that cannot be imitated. It is not about appearance or effort. It is about energy. Carl Jung would have called it the integration of the feminine archetype, the embodiment of inner wholeness. When a woman is rooted in who she is, when she no longer needs external validation to feel complete, she moves differently. She becomes magnetic, not by chasing attention, but by holding presence. She does not need to fill every silence. She is not afraid of space. In fact, she creates it. Around her, people breathe differently. Men feel seen without being judged. They feel challenged, not through confrontation, but through her authenticity. She does not entertain games, but she does not try to control outcomes either. Her boundaries are clear, not because she announced them, but because they live in the way she moves, the way she responds, the way she chooses. And here's the part that most people miss. What makes her unforgettable is not that she gives more, it's that she gives from a place of fullness. She listens without needing to fix. She connects without needing to possess. She loves, but only when it feels true, not when it is convenient or expected. And when something no longer aligns with her peace, she walks away. Not to punish, not to manipulate, but because she knows what she is worth. This is where it gets counterintuitive. The more you try to be remembered, the more likely you are to be forgotten. Because effort that comes from fear of not being enough, fear of being left, fear of being unseen transmits anxiety, not attraction. But the woman who is at peace with herself, who doesn't fear losing what is not meant for her, who chooses herself first, sends a completely different signal. She is not trying to hold on. She is not trying to convince. And in doing so, she leaves a deeper mark. Men remember how you made them feel. But more than that, they remember how they felt about themselves in your presence. The unforgettable woman does not inflate their ego. She calls forth their truth. She does not flatter their surface. She invites their depth. And that invitation, once extended, is hard to ignore. Jung believed that every meaningful connection is a mirror. When a man meets a woman who embodies her own value, he is forced to confront whether he is living in alignment with his. She doesn't say it. She doesn't need to. Her energy challenges him, not with pressure, but with presence. Not by demanding more, but by being more. And sometimes, this reflection is too much. He might pull away. He might disappear. Not because she did anything wrong, but because something within him is not ready to rise. And still, he will remember her. Because even in her silence, she awakened something he could not unsee. This is why doing less often leads to more. The more you withhold unnecessary effort, the more space you create for genuine connection. The less you try to prove yourself, the more powerful your presence becomes. The less you try to be everything, the more clearly you reflect something real. The unforgettable woman does not abandon herself for love. She does not twist into shapes to please. She remains steady, even when the other person wavers. She knows that real connection cannot be forced. That love is not something to chase, but something to allow. And if it is not mutual, it is not meant to last. Her mystery is not about being distant or aloof. It is about being whole. You cannot decode her because she is not performing. She is not playing a role. She is simply present. And presence, real presence, is rare. In a world of noise and distraction, the person who has come home to herself stands out without trying. This woman does not interrupt a man's life. She illuminates it. She shows him something he didn't know he was missing. And even if the timing is wrong, even if they part ways, her impact remains. Because she did not offer a version of herself that was tailored to him. She offered the truth. And truth, once felt, changes everything. If you've ever wondered why some men never fully let go, why someone still watches your stories or brings up your name years later, this may be why. It wasn't what you did. It was who you were. And more importantly, who you didn't stop being. You do not need to shout to be remembered. You do not need to chase to be valued. You only need to stop abandoning your truth in the name of love. The moment you live from your essence, your energy shifts. You speak less, but are heard more. You do less, but are felt more. You disappear from their life, but not from their soul. That is the secret. Not to impress, not to perform, but to become. And when you do, you won't need to wonder if he will remember you. He already does. Not because you were loud, but because your presence whispered something he could never quite forget. This is not a love strategy. This is not a game of seduction, a list of steps, or a new set of rules to follow so you can win someone's affection. This is not about how to text back, how long to wait, or how to appear less interested so he might be more. That may have worked for a while. It may still work on the surface, but it never brings peace. It never creates depth. It never leads you home to yourself. What we are talking about here is something far more profound. This is not about love as a goal to reach. It is about you as a whole person, finally choosing to stop shrinking, stop performing, and stop living for the gaze of others. It is about becoming who you were before the world told you who you had to be. Because somewhere along the way, you were taught that love is something you earn, that being chosen means being worthy, that if you just do enough, say the right things, look the right way, and silence your needs, someone will stay. You learn to read the room before you read your own feelings. You learn to adapt, to please, to mold yourself around someone else's expectations. And maybe it worked. Maybe they stayed. But at what cost? Carl Jung spoke about the process of individuation, the unfolding of the self into wholeness. He believed that the greatest task of our lives is not to become who others want us to be, but to uncover who we truly are. That process often begins when everything you thought would make you happy begins to feel empty. When you start to sense that no amount of approval or love from another person can fill the space that opens when you are disconnected from yourself. That is not failure. That is the invitation. This path is not about attracting more love. It is about reclaiming your essence, about turning inward, not to fix something that is broken, but to remember something that was forgotten. Your voice, your boundaries, your desires, your instinct, your deep knowing. When a woman lives in that place, she no longer needs tactics. Her energy speaks. She no longer waits to be chosen. She has already chosen herself. She doesn't ask, will he stay? She asks, does this connection reflect the truth of who I am becoming? That is the shift, from performance to presence, from strategy to embodiment, from fear to truth. And it is not easy. Because the moment you stop playing the role, you might lose people. You might confuse those who were used to your silence, your sweetness, your compliance. You might face loneliness, doubt, and the temptation to go back to what felt safer. But safety is not the same as freedom. Freedom comes when you are no longer willing to betray yourself to be loved. When your peace becomes more valuable than their attention. When your authenticity becomes more sacred than their approval. This is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming real. And realness carries its own magnetism. Not the kind that draws everyone, but the kind that draws the right ones. People who are drawn not to your mask, but to your essence. People who see your depth and do not flinch. People who meet your clarity with their own. You do not need to be everything to be enough. You need only to be fully yourself. Jung believed that the soul calls us again and again toward what is true, even if it breaks us, especially if it breaks us, because often it is in the breaking that we see. We see the difference between love that costs us ourselves and love that helps us return to who we are. So ask yourself honestly, what have you given up just to be loved? What parts of yourself have you silenced, adjusted, or hidden because you believed they were too much, too inconvenient, too unlovable? Now ask yourself another question. Who would you be if you stopped doing that? The answer is not someone different. The answer is you, unfiltered, unmasked, alive. And yes, there will be moments when you miss the comfort of old patterns. Moments when you long for the simplicity of being told what to do, how to be, what to feel. But those are just echoes of your old self. They are not your truth. The truth is that you were never here to perform for love. You were here to embody it, to become it. And the first place it must land is within you. So let this be the turning point. Let this be the moment you stop asking how to get him to love you and start asking how to love yourself enough, not to wait for him. Let this be the season where you no longer mold yourself to fit into someone else's idea of worth. Let this be the beginning of something sacred, not a tactic, not a trick, but a homecoming. You are not too much. You are just offering your depth to those still swimming in shallow waters. You are not hard to love, but your truth cannot be held by those who fear their own. This is not about love as a strategy. This is about liberation. And the moment you realize that, everything begins to change. Not because he finally sees your value, but because you do. And that changes the way you move, the way you choose, the way you love. That changes everything. When you begin to change, when you finally come home to yourself, something unexpected happens. Some people will disappear, and many of them will be men who once seemed deeply connected to you. At first, this may feel confusing, even painful. You may wonder what you did wrong. You may question your worth, your energy, your choices. But the truth is this: their disappearance is not a loss. It is confirmation, because the version of you they were drawn to is no longer here. The one who doubted her voice, the one who softened her truth to be accepted, the one who said yes when she meant no. That woman, beautiful and brave as she was, is gone, and in her place stands someone who no longer lives in fear of her own power. And that power disrupts everything. It does not threaten men who are rooted in themselves. It does not intimidate those who have done their own inner work, but it absolutely shakes those who depended on your smallness. Not out of malice, but because your previous self kept their comfort intact. You did not challenge their avoidance. You did not demand presence. You did not require depth. But now you do. Now you hold eye contact longer. Now you pause before saying yes. Now you ask real questions, and you don't accept vague answers. Now you feel when energy is off, and you trust that feeling. You are no longer available for love that costs you clarity, or connection that depends on your silence. And so they leave. Not because you are less lovable, but because you are no longer a mirror for their illusions. You no longer play the role they needed you to play. The pleaser, the fixer, the one who never asked for more. Carl Jung taught that relationships are often built on projection. We don't see people as they are. We see them as we need them to be. When you grow, you break that projection. you become real. And realness is disruptive. It forces the other person to face themselves. That is why some men will vanish. Not out of rejection, but out of resistance. They are not ready to meet themselves through you. And rather than rise to the reflection you now offer, they retreat to where they can stay unchanged. Let them. Their exit is not your failure. It is your clearing. Because when you stop shrinking, the room gets smaller. Only those willing to expand alongside you can stay. And that is not rejection. That is resonance. You are not losing love. You are shedding illusions. You are no longer entertaining connections that require you to abandon yourself. And in that process, yes, some will go. But notice what happens next. The space that opens. The quiet that follows. The new energy that begins to stir. When someone leaves your life because you became more of yourself, it is a sacred filter. Let them walk. You are not meant to carry everyone into your becoming. Some were only meant to meet the older version of you. They were a chapter, not the ending. And what comes next will not require you to return to who you were. It will meet you where you are. It will see you without needing you to hide. It will stay, not because you make yourself easy to love, but because you make yourself impossible to forget. So if they disappear, bless them, not in bitterness, but in truth. They came to teach you something. Maybe about your patterns, maybe about your worth, maybe about the ways you gave too much, too fast, too often. But now you know. Now you choose differently. And the right ones, those who feel like peace, not performance, will not flinch at your power. They will not retreat when your standards rise. They will not leave when your voice becomes clear. They will stay, not to complete you, but to walk beside you. And in that presence, you will feel it. The quiet joy of being loved, not for who you pretended to be, but for who you finally are. There comes a moment when everything shifts. Not because he changed, but because you did. The way he looks at you now is different. Not because you tried to make it happen, but because you stopped trying altogether. You stopped performing, pleasing, waiting, bending. You returned to yourself. And in doing so, something in you became undeniable. He no longer sees you through the same lens. You are not the version of you who once questioned her worth, who once waited for someone to choose her. You are not reaching anymore. You are not seeking confirmation in his words or safety in his attention. You are simply here, whole, present, and clear, and that energy cannot be ignored. He feels it. Even if he doesn't fully understand it, he feels the shift. You do not need him to see you to know you exist. You do not need his love to feel lovable. That changes the dynamic. That breaks the pattern. That awakens something in both of you. You have become the kind of woman who no longer lives in reaction. You no longer mold yourself to be understood. Instead, you live in alignment with what is true for you. That truth makes you magnetic. Not in a way that demands, but in a way that invites. Not in a way that clings, but in a way that liberates. And maybe he sees it now. Maybe he looks at you and realizes that you are no longer trying to be chosen. You are choosing yourself. Maybe he sees the woman who once doubted her power, now standing in it with grace. And maybe, just maybe, he feels what it means to meet someone who no longer needs to be seen in order to shine. But the most beautiful part is this. It is no longer about how he sees you. It is about how you see you. Because once you return to yourself, you can never unsee what you now know. You can never go back to dimming your light or shrinking your truth. You can never again settle for a version of love that asks you to abandon your soul. This is not the end of a love story. It is the beginning of a deeper one. The one you write with yourself first. And when someone does come along, if they come, they will be meeting the real you, not the version shaped by fear, but the one born from fire. So let him see you differently. Let him pause and wonder when you became so still, so sure, so radiant. And if he doesn't, you will still see yourself. And that was the point all along.